go with Cecilia Santiago. And even though Cecilia is the most recent graduate of Whittier College, she had the least memories to share.
Oh gosh, I was just in a hurry.
But she does have as her favorite memory doing research with Drs. Paula Sheridan and Claudia Dorrington, and she got to present that research at a national conference. So I also wanted to share one of my favorite memories of Cece is because she took my career class. So in the class, at the very beginning of the class, I have people reflect on their parents' attitude about work. Jennifer can attest to this because she's in my class right now. So Cece, I remember shared, I remember this very distinctly because you shared that your mother said it doesn't matter what work you do as long as you do it to the best of your ability, and that was your kind of guiding light for yourself. So with that, we'll let her tell her story of how she went from poet to professional.
Awesome. Well, actually another favorite memory is that I actually took my freshman writing seminar in this house. So my first class at Whittier College was actually at that table where all the yummy food was there. So I actually, before coming to Whittier College, I actually had never visited campus, to be honest. I had never been to campus. I had never heard of Whittier College before. Obviously, you know, before applying, a counselor just told me, hey, there's this really cool school, you should apply to it, and I did. And so, but to my surprise, Whittier College definitely became my home. It was difficult to adjust. I commuted from actually downtown Los Angeles by bus. Took 4 buses to get here during my freshman year, and but soon I decided that this was the place that I wanted to be and that I was going to work to the best of my ability to stay here. And I came originally to Whittier College with the intention to major in occupational therapy, and I'm not really sure that exists anymore. It was a pre-physical therapy, occupational therapy program, and that was an eye-opener because I realized that I wasn't prepared. I had gone to Theodore Roosevelt High School in Boyle Heights, and I wasn't very prepared to take science classes, although I was in a science and math magnet there. And so I decided to go to the other side of the spectrum, so I decided to major in social work. And you know, as freshmen particularly may think, oh, why do I have to take that class? You know, what does it have to do with my major? Or why do I have to take a pair course? You still have pair courses, right? So one of my first experiences was taking a paired course. So I actually took 2 paired courses. I took a social work course and I took a biology course. So that had to do with the epidemic of AIDS. So we looked at the problem through a biology context and then also through a social work context, so policy and understanding the disease from the biological aspects of it. And then I took another course. It was a sociology class and math course. So we looked at social problems with data. And actually, I was just thinking about that because currently I'm a researcher at USC and one of the education research centers there. And I have to say that those are the 2 classes that have most influenced me to do a good job in my current position. And it was right before, actually a few days before I received Anna's email with the invitation, that I was reflecting on that. Another piece that has really been beneficial coming to a liberal arts college is the writing component. I think Dr. Joe had mentioned that. I see, obviously, you know, writing is something very personal, and it's also something that you continue growing on a day-to-day basis. But I couldn't have been where I'm at right now without the help that I got here to become a better writer, a better critical thinker, to look at things, you know, through different angles, with different perspectives. So the paired courses was one of those areas that I was able to look at the same problem through different lenses. I mean, and I initially, you know, as someone who English wasn't my first language, you know, writing was always something that I shied away from. And I've been commended, by because of my writing skills. My professor, I was just telling my fiance a while ago, she sends me her dissertation group, their dissertation so I could edit them, and I'm like, okay, I don't want to see any other dissertation but mine right now. So that was something that I always valued and that I really attribute to the education that I received here. And as a researcher, your writing and your communication is really important because you're able to communicate with your constituents and trying to explain your problem and what you found through your research through writing and other forms of communication. And so that has been some of the areas that I really see my liberal arts education benefit me. I wasn't always a researcher. I actually was in student affairs for over close to 10 years. My entire career has been dedicated to serving underrepresented students, specifically in higher education, developing programs and policies to assist them to navigate the college education. And partly it's because of my own personal experiences in higher education, being the first in my family to graduate from college. And now I'm one of 3 women who have a bachelor's degree, and now the only one who's attempting to get a doctorate degree. So it's really my life experience, my experience as a student here at Whittier, having amazing mentors, has really guided my career in education. And it's not a good time to be an educator, to be honest. And I say that very frankly, because it's tough. It's really tough. I mean, if you hear just today in the LA Times, there was about 35,000 students will be pushed away from the CSU. But then yesterday we heard about presidents getting a raise, within the budget, situation that we have. And so that creates a lot of dichotomy and a lot of confusion and a lot of disappointment. But then again, there's a lot of opportunities for educators and people who are committed to serving the community to create the change that Joe was speaking of. So it is a scary time, but it's also an exciting time to implement change and to come with new ideas about where we're going with education. So sometimes I think I'm like, well, I could have done anything else but education, right? And so, but in the end, I try to do other things, and I keep coming back to it because it's really, I think education, although it's inequitable in many areas, I think that it's it provides hope, and it provides an opportunity to level the playing field for a lot of people. I'm doing a dissertation on the role of faculty in the educational experience of low-income Latino students in STEM. Because of my experience, and I wanted to be a science major, but I couldn't really do it. I didn't feel prepared. But it wasn't because of my I could have learned probably, but I didn't have anyone to mentor me or to open that door for me. And I feel like I could eventually be an institutional agent. That's what I call my faculty who I interview. I could be that change agent who encourages others. And so you asked the question about what is it going to take to change education, to improve education. And I think really the key is people. That's going to take people to really have the mindset to create that change. Change is not going to come out of heaven. Obviously, we could use heaven as a mechanism. We could pray to whoever we pray to, right, to create that change. But it's really going to take people to take that step and to be committed to creating that change. And at the center where we work, we call that equity-mindedness. So creating environments that everyone has access to an equitable education. Developing tools for people to change their beliefs, attitudes, and perceptions about who deserves an education, who doesn't deserve an education. All students deserve an education. So that's a little bit about my track, and I may stay in research. Actually, I like it. I think it's kind of nerdy, but I really like it. I really enjoy it. I was telling Gregory that one of the things that has really helped me in the contributions that I make is that I've been out in the field, and I don't see my research just as research and theorizing about how to solve problems. It's actually solving problems. And again, I owe that a lot to the experiences that I had here. I'm able to to, you know, see the different perspectives, the different disciplines that inform my education. But it's also, I was in a pre-professional program here. I was in a social work program, which is a lot of liberal arts colleges don't have a pre-professional programs. And that gave me the opportunity to have like the learn by doing type of experience.
Does anyone have any questions?
What type of internships did you do, if any, while you were here?
Mm-hmm.
And what did you do immediately after leaving school?
Okay. So
She asked about internships, so that Cecilia did. In case you couldn't hear her, Joe, if you're still there. Okay. I have him on low on speaker.
Well, actually, because my program is a pre-professional program and we're accredited by the National Association of Social Workers, we have to do about, I want to say 500, but I don't know if it's 500 or 800 hours of internship or field work. And I actually did my field work at a substance abuse facility for teenagers in particular. So I worked at all kinds of levels. So my field work allowed me to have one-on-one counseling with youth who were on probation for drug-related charges. I had the opportunity to do group counseling with young women. And actually I taught a parenting class, and I wasn't even a parent. You know, I'm not a parent, but I was able to teach a parenting class. And then I also did community organizing at the projects where a lot of these youth lived. And I was just, you know, educating the community about their rights, but also, you know, to create a neighborhood watch in their community. And Linda talked about the research that I did with Drs. Paula Sheridan and Claudia Dorrington. And that was, I'm not sure if you know that Latinos at Whittier College graduate at higher rates than any other group on campus. You know, we're a Hispanic serving institution. And so we wanted to find out why. Not that we wanted to stop that, right? But we wanted to know what is helping Latino students at Whittier College graduate. What is it that's working? Because maybe we could inform others and replicate some of these things at other campuses like Whittier College. And so we interviewed students here and interviewed their parents. So I actually conducted research in Spanish, which is a whole different thing because you have to translate everything and make sure that you keep their voice intact. And I think those two experiences really allowed me to have something on my resume when I graduated. So I really became interested in the educational context and educational policies and programs. So right after I graduated, I actually worked here as an admissions counselor. And within the admissions office, I recruited in underrepresented areas. So I made sure that Whittier was out in communities where usually colleges don't go to. And so I did that. And then after a year, I was recruited to move to student life. And so for a bit, after being Linda's student, I was her colleague, like within a year or two, right?
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, so I was the associate director of the cultural center here, and that was a lot of fun. And then I went to work at Cal Poly Pomona, and I ran a cultural center there for almost 4.5 years. And then I decided to go back to school, and I worked for College Board for a little bit. You took the SATs with College Board? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I worked with them for a little bit, and then I decided that I needed to focus on school and taught part-time, which was an interesting experience being a faculty member. And then I got recruited to do some research at USC. So I've had definitely a lot of different experiences.
Okay. I have another question. How was your research put into policy?
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we do at USC, so we call it action research. So participatory action research. And what that means is that we don't just go into the institution and look at their data and say, well, this is your problem, right? So we actually, and I think Whittier may be participating in our process, where we actually teach faculty, staff, students at an institution to look at their data and identify the problems and also choose the problem that they need to work on. Because as we know, budgets are limited, priorities are competing, and the institution in itself decides what problems they go to focus on. And then they go through a 5-step process, and in the 5th stage of our process, the institution changes policy. So we may not influence legislative policy, but we definitely change institutional policy. So let me give you an example of something that we've done. So in a school that will remain unnamed, people would say, well, African American students don't want to come here, or they just don't apply, right? But when we look at the neighborhood surrounding the university, it was predominantly African American. And so, they just are not interested in school, or, like with the deficit-minded, approach, right? So thinking about in a negative way. So it's, they just don't want to come here. So we help the institution look at their application process. And so what we found out is that it's not that they were not applying, it was just not completing the application. And what do you think was missing from the application?
The fee.
The fee, exactly. And when this state actually participated in a fee waiver program. So what could then we reverse that, so we're not interested, the students are not interested in applying. We turned it, well, what can the institution do to help these students complete their application? And that became a policy that when students were missing the fee waiver, it was flagged in their system, and the admissions counselors or like an automatic email system was sent to them to inform them about their fee waiver. They made sure that their fee waiver information was on their website, that they was sent on Twitter, or was sent on Facebook, or was sent whatever. And it may not be insignificant, it may be seen insignificant, but in reality, it's allowing students who otherwise wouldn't have access to an institution to have that access. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And it could go on and on. So it could be, we also do work about culturally inclusive pedagogy. So we create these workshops for faculty to look at their syllabus. Something so simple as their syllabi, right? So when you go to class, you get your syllabi, right? And we do this exercise to ensure that the syllabi is culturally inclusive. And so it's we use a tool called document analysis. So it's a qualitative research tool that we use, right? And we don't tell them, your syllabi sucks, we actually allow the faculty to reflect on their syllabi, and then we provide some information about how other faculty have made their syllabi culturally inclusive. Because it's a contract, and sometimes, when students do not have what we call the social cultural capital, they say, well, go get this book. Well, where do I get it? Or how do I log on to Blackboard or whatever? It's just providing resources. So if you're going to offer challenge, you have to support the student. At least that's the philosophy that the center where I work at has. And, people have told us that their attitudes, perceptions, and beliefs about the students that they work with change. And in urban settings, that's really, really important. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Well, we need to move on.
Yes.
So thank you very much. So that was great. So our next panelist is Dr. Sharon Nordheim, and she shared with me how much she loved Whittier, and she had 2 majors, English and speech, and then she said debate speech. Well, is that the type of
I
speech
do
that
both
was?
debate and public speaking.
As she attended Whittier's University of Copenhagen program in Denmark in her sophomore year, and she lived with the editor of Berlingske Tidende, the largest newspaper in Denmark. She graduated in 5 years with master's degree, her master's degree, 2 majors, and her secondary teaching credential. She was greatly supported by Dr. Tressler, the chair of her master committee, and Jerry Paul. She was first pinned and later engaged to her debate partner, and convocation chair, Jack Swickard, who later became a criminal attorney. The career of education has been her life passion. Her final position thus far has been superintendent of schools, and her terminal educational degree has been an EDD in educational leadership at the Urban Education from University of Southern California in 2006. Go Trojans, we're heavy on the Trojans tonight. And she's currently CEO for Inspiration Associates.
Well, thank you. I'm just thrilled to have heard Joe and Cecilia. It's just thrilling to hear the perspectives, and I hope each of you are as excited as you can be about the future that you can be a part of. As challenging as the times are, as difficult as a hill it can seem sometimes, as you listen to financial perspectives, as you hear about teachers who have been teachers in the profession for years and have been a part of years of a sense that they are, quote, safe because they are tenured. As you listen to criticism that is as difficult and hard as you have ever heard, and for those of us sitting up here with the range represented here in the various eras of time, there have always been time periods that education has been criticized. And yet in America, our foundation of this democracy is public education. So what is critical and central to all the comments of what we're aware of is that if we are to maintain part of the fabric of our culture, this is one of the most important times ever that we step forward and we understand the importance of the role that every child have access to learning. Not teaching, but learning. And that's probably one of the most dramatic mindset shifts that I think has helped education in the past. You pick the number of years you like, whatever fits for you. Because when we stop thinking about the teacher and we started thinking about the student learning, we got on the right track. It's dramatic, but I remember the day the shift of the language, even just here in California, changed. And it came alive. It was that incredible understanding that we didn't have our focus set on the right place, because everything else fell into place the minute we understood that we needed to make sure kids learned. It wasn't how the teacher was doing. It wasn't how we evaluated the teacher. It was what were we doing to make sure kids learned. And in your description of backpack to briefcase and beyond the classroom, honestly, being a divergent thinker can be an absolute nightmare for any of you who might be divergent thinkers, because unlike those of you who think logically sequential, you normally get to a series of answers rather directly. Sometimes business people can be logical sequential, unless you have to be someone like myself who gets put in a business position and then you have to use random as effectively and as controlled as possible so that you don't do serious, frightening things to the business department. What I'm saying to you is that it is critically important in education that we understand the importance that students have to be supported in their learning. So a very bright person who was the superintendent of the United States, recognized for that role, and now a very successful trainer internationally on this, and I'm not going to say his name because it isn't about him, it's about a concept he suggested, was that you take a triangle and you invert it. And if you're doing education properly for kids, you take your central office, and the central office is not up here at the top. It is at the bottom. And the big wide base is at the top. And you know what that is? That's the classroom, or the place of learning. It doesn't matter whether it's a classroom, outdoors, inside of a business, doing research, wherever it is. And if in fact that learning is getting the support of the entire organization and community, we are going to be successful. Because the more hands that we work with and the more resources that we pull to bear from every dimension, we have a chance to succeed. So if the business person is your best advocate for education, not just from financial, but as a knowledgeable, supported partner in the process, to be a part of the decision making. If your students from all ages are partnering in what they need, if your voice is represented, and the younger voices and the more mature voices are part, we have a chance to do what your questions were. We have a chance to look at the economy. We have a chance to look at the support base, because if you turn around in California, we're more interested in what we drive most of our population than what our kids are getting for resources for education. And you know what? It isn't that way everywhere. It isn't that way everywhere in the world. And we are making some very short-sighted decisions. And you are part, if you choose, of that population that has a chance to turn not just the financial, but the political, economic, social setting of the United States around, if we are to turn where we're headed for kids. And it's not about, well, I'm a teacher, I don't do politics. Joe told you it straight front up. He said, you want this to work? You are going to be a politician. You must be an advocate. You are looking at a time period that it's not a passive work, whatever role you play. Whether you're in a teacher's union, whether you're in a classified union, whether you are an individual teacher, whatever role you play, a new student, it doesn't matter. You must be an advocate and not allow people who do not know anything more than the day they sat in a classroom, that they somehow know this profession better than any other and they know everything about it. It's simply not true. So what I'm saying to you is, the bottom line is, don't give up. If you love this profession with a passion, stay with it. Go after it and give it everything you can. Definitely, as Joe indicated, learn to work, to get feedback and action in groups. And definitely know it's not a short-term effort. This is a life commitment if you are committed to making a difference in this area. And you know what? If you're in the right profession, you won't even escape. You won't even want to. And I would just say, Whittier is a wonderful setting through the liberal arts to understand that the skills you need for life to survive, and the ones that have been mentioned, the critical thinking, the writing, the ability to speak, the importance of understanding that you listen more than you speak. 2 ears, 1 mouth, my husband reminds me of this one. And the fact that it's important to understand that we need to learn more than we need to tell. Those are probably the most important things I could think of that I would encourage you. And if it's not what you like and you get in it, it's a little bit like the first babysitter I had. She was first a housekeeper, and I really loved her. She was really great, young, enthusiastic, thought she'd be a great babysitter. Had my son. First 3 weeks of working, I thought everything was just going to be perfect, and then she told me, you know, I have just one problem with this job. And I said, well, tell me about it. I just really don't like kids. Well, we resolved that very rapidly the same day. It's a little bit same with teaching. If it's not your profession, get out. There's a lot of other things you can do. If it's yours, go for it. Don't give up if you don't get the first job. There are a lot of jobs. If you were to look over my resume, I have sat in just about every position that there is in a school district, with the exception of coaching. I have not done any coaching. Sports is not my highlighted skill. But I have been in a lot of areas, and being in a district is like living in a city. All the things that happen in a city happen in a district or a college. So there are a lot of things to do. That's what I would share.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
I have a question. So it says that you were a superintendent.
Yes.
How did you become a superintendent? Were you a teacher first, and then what was your road to become a superintendent?
I will tell you my road. It doesn't always take this many. I did it consciously. I was a teacher. I was a counselor. Then I was an assistant principal. I was going to be a principal, and I had a baby. And the day I was first at home, when I was invited to be principal of a high school, my superintendent called and said, "Would you be our principal? You need to be here in a week." And I said, "You know, I don't think this is going to work. I just had my baby yesterday, and I think I need to be home and I'm not going to open school late." It ended up, my path went differently. I ended up then going to a district office, that same district. I then went back to the school site to pick up being an assistant principal in a high school. I then went on from there to the county office, the Orange County Department of Ed, and was there for 12 years in 7 roles: curriculum, technology, and a variety. Left there and became an assistant principal in business. These are the ones I did: business, human resources, classified certificate, and I also did associate superintendent and then superintendent.
Okay, well, we have one more speaker and we're running out of time, so very quickly, let me introduce Gregory
The lawyer
McNair.
there.
Greg was a basketball player here at Whittier.
Yes.
And so he has fond memories of trip to Hawaii. Those are not for everybody. But he did get to play in some NCAA tournaments, and he remembers getting crushed by big Division I schools that they played from time to time. Bob's Big Boy was favorite eating spot during vacation periods. And the cafeteria was closed, and the players were required to remain on campus to attend practice. His favorite class was a comparative religion class that was taught by Professor Yoakum. And his biggest surprise was when he took a nutrition class that he thought was going to be relatively easy, but it turned out to be one of the most difficult and interesting classes that he ever had here.
Vitamin C. I always remember vitamin C. Not too much of that. Let me see. I am a linear thinker, so I'm going to kind of go in a linear fashion. Because I connect with everybody in all this week. When I was in high school, I loved to play basketball. I was a good student, but I wasn't really interested in academics, and my parents didn't go to college. So I didn't really know anything about the rules in terms of going to college. I didn't really even know about the SAT. But my coach, who was both my counselor, I don't think he was a very good counselor, frankly, but he, because I didn't know about these things, but he knew I wanted to continue to play basketball, so he introduced me to a few coaches around, and the one that I really connected with was David Jacobs, who was the basketball coach here at Whittier when I was here, and you know, I spoke to him, and we sat down, and he said, "Well, you haven't taken the SAT yet." And this was probably a month before you had to take the SAT in order to get into school for the next semester. So I said, "What's that?" He says, "It's a test you got to take," and he actually helped me sign up for it. And I signed up for it. I did relatively well on it, and so I sent my paperwork in, and I was at Whittier College. If it hadn't been for David Jacobs, I don't know if I'd ever gone to college, because it wasn't something that I was really thinking about. So when I got here, though, I had high school mentality. My mentality was, school's about getting grades. I need to get the best grades I can. And the reason Professor Yoakum's class was my favorite, which I think I took in my sophomore year, is that in that class I learned about a couple of things. One is the importance of words, how critical words are, and that's why writing is important. Communication is critical. Higher level thinking. Not only understanding what the words are, what the words what the superficial meaning of the words are, but the meaning behind the words, how crucial that was. I didn't understand that before I took this course. And then the importance of understanding the people around you and the people who you're connecting with. The importance of understanding folks' perspectives. Because what we learned in that class was the different perspectives on religion. All those things kind of struck me, and from there, I became more than a person in a classroom trying to get a grade. I became a student, not only of the narrow subject matter I was reading or partaking in a certain class, but a student trying to figure out how all these things fit together. We didn't have combined classes when I was at Whittier. We sort of had the traditional track, and all those things have stuck with me and actually helped me throughout my life and throughout my career. After I left Whittier, went to UCLA Law School, and decided that I would also do the MBA, join JD MBA at Whittier Law School, and at UCLA Law School and UCLA Business School. Finished that. Best thing that happened to me at UCLA was I met my wife. But still thinking about what do all these laws mean, and what the context of all these things, and again, that foundation coming from Whittier, I don't think I can stress enough, because I call my kids and they'll tell you that I talk to them about this all the time. Right? You're like, Dad, shut up. You know, we understand that. But I tell them, look, this class is not about you getting a grade. This class is about you understanding the world that you live in. And so when you take trigonometry or you take calculus, it's more than about the numbers that are on the page. It's about more than that. But anyway, so I'm talking fast. So so my career path was kind of circuitous. I started out with a law firm that was really into issuing bonds that the state issues. You know, the state sells bonds to investors so that they can get money to build buildings and so on and so forth. So I was writing, 50, 60-page documents that sort of supported the transaction, because when people want to invest money, they want to see a lot of paper because they feel good, right? If there's a lot of paper, this is really a good transaction. They just don't know it's a first and second year law student law graduate who's drafting these papers. But that was so boring. I would actually fall asleep in my chair, and then I'd wake up. You know how sometimes you're going on a ride in the car and you're going like this, and I would do that, and I would think, man, if one of the partners walked in right now, I'd be in trouble. So I stopped doing that. It was just too boring. And I had a friend who was at another law firm, and he said, why don't you come on over here and practice law with us? And so I went to that law firm where I went to court. I had one of those court jobs where I went to court. It was business stuff that I was doing. Much more exciting, much more interesting. But really, this thing that I learned at Whittier was still always gnawing in the back of my head. I was like, really? Is this what I want to do with my life? How am I affecting the world around me? So I decided to leave there, and because I wanted to affect the world around me, I decided to join with a friend of mine and start my own law firm doing entertainment law, right? So that's because that helps the world. No, it doesn't. But I did that because I had a friend who was in the entertainment industry, so I represented some artists and entertainers, mostly music artists, who, by the way, they have a very difficult life. If you're thinking about being a musician, I think that's a great thing, because I love art, and I think that a lot of musicians are poets, and they do like Whittier, but it's really hard to make money in that business. So, because they weren't paying their bills on time and always, and I was working 18-hour days, I decided I was going to get out of that business too. and something happened. I actually had a friend who was in construction and who had a dispute with the Los Angeles Unified School District. And I was suing the school district and trying to get this guy's money from the school district. And I met one of the school district attorneys in court, and we were talking, and he said, we're looking for lawyers at the school district. I said, really? I said, do I have to work for 18 hours? He said, no. I said, well, I think I'll sign up. And so I sent in my resume, and about 2 months later, they called me and said, we'd like you to come interview, and I got the job. And my client was upset because but I said, I'll refer you to a good lawyer. I know some good lawyers I can refer you to. Since then, I've worked in several different departments. Right now, LA Unified is about 36 lawyers in-house, and I supervise about 10 of those lawyers and some paralegals and some secretaries and other administrators, and we kind of focus on the business side, the support side of the district, not the directly on the school side. But in my evolution through the district, any of you ever gone to a charter school? Really? Which one?
First school is in San Diego.
Oh, it's in San Diego? You're right. Oh, okay, yes, because I know the price people, the rich people who support that school. But in my going through the legal department, I became sort of an expert in the whole charter school thing, and the person who was running the department left to take another position at another school district, and the superintendent asked me to be the superintendent for charter schools at LA Unified. I did that job for 3.5 years. Probably the best, most difficult, but best job I've ever had. And because really, I have to say that I don't think there's any institution in our country that's more important than K-12 education. All due respect to higher education, I just think that if you don't get the foundation in K-12, higher education's not going to do. You can still do it, but there are a lot of opportunities you miss, and a lot of the discussion, a lot of the things that Joe was talking about, Cecilia was talking about, and we're all talking about here, just came to bear, and so I'm not and I'll just give you just a couple minutes because I know this is not an education policy discussion, but I will say, No Child Left Behind, bad law, but good. One good thing that came out of it was that I think was the first time it is the first time that through that law, we started to focus in on who's getting it and who's not. And they identified people who are getting it and who are not. I didn't like the penalty part of it, but that I loved that piece of it. And the idea of, are the kids learning as opposed to are the teachers teaching? I mean, I think that's when the conversation really started about that. So let me talk, I know this is a Backpack-to-Briefcase discussion about what you can do in education that isn't teaching. But I do want to make a plug for teaching. I have 4 daughters. 2 of my daughters are teachers. My oldest daughter is a special education teacher. My second daughter wants to be an elementary school teacher. She can't find a job now, but she's doing some other things until she gets there. So they've got an education book. My wife was a teacher before she became a lawyer. I think teachers are heroes, and I can't remember any of my K-12 teachers' names, but I know that they have all played a part in me being where I am today, because there's no way I could know half of the stuff. And frankly, again, the facts in college, and all due respect to the professors, I can't remember where I learned the facts I learned. I don't know if I learned them at Whittier or in high school or in law school. I don't remember. But what I do know is I learned that at all these places that learning is important, always important. When you leave here, learning is going to be important, even when you're working. And that critical thinking is important. So I want to list for you, I'm just going to list for you some of the jobs, because you're right. LA Unified, 700,000 students. It's a city-state. I mean, and I'm just going to list for you some of the departments that I touched today. I just wrote these down today. Police department. They have a police department, over 300 police officers. If you want to be a police officer, this is one place you can be there. Insurance and risk management. If you're interested in insurance, anybody here in insurance? Because I want to say, I don't know why you would be. No, that's a fine career. It's a fine career. So if you're interested in insurance, risk management, you can do that at the district. Communications. If you're interested in communicating, with the press and doing public relations, we have that at the school district. Food services. We feed more people, we feed more meals at LA Unified than in some states. Twice a day, we feed hundreds of thousands of kids. Contracts and procurement. You probably don't know what that means. We buy stuff. Millions of tons of meat. We bought the other day millions of dollars worth of trash bags. Somebody has to deal with the vendors and do the contracting. We have that. Transportation. We transport kids from home to school and back. Payroll, accounting, accounts receivable, information technology. We have one of the most sophisticated computer systems in the country at LA Unified. Ethics. We have an ethics office. We do believe in ethics at LA Unified. And we have an ethics officer. If you're interested in that, you can do that. Charter school office, I'd said a little bit of that. Legal office is where I work. We have after school programs. Important, it's crucial. You can do that. And then we have a person who, an office that deals with the Board of Education. We call it the board secretary. They organize all the meetings and all the material for the meetings. They analyze all the laws relating to open meetings and things like that. That was just today. And I'm not even naming all of the other places. Being in a support role again, because I went from being the charter school superintendent back to being a lawyer, is different. But the reason I enjoy this job better than I do the jobs I had before is I know that what I do, as a support person, what I try to do is save the district as much money as possible so that money can go to the school side. And unfortunately, we do have legal issues at the school site, and what I try to do is be a problem solver, not a problem creator. I try to help people come together, resolve an issue, so the teachers and the principals can do what they are supposed to do, what their jobs are at the school site. So I think education is the civil rights issue of our time. And it's a great civil rights issue because it's everybody's right, civil right. I mean, not everybody is being affected by a lot of the things that Joe talked about, the defunding of schools, which I think is a very difficult thing. We also need creativity and people who are willing to think think differently. There's in the urban school setting, I'm talking New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, others. I've gone around the country to look at all sorts of different ways that school districts organize themselves. But there's a whole infrastructure that's grown up around that. You ever Teach for America? Teach for America, School Pioneers, the Broad Leadership Foundation. I can name about 10 others where, again, opportunities to be involved in school leadership, in school reform that aren't in the classroom. Lots of opportunities. So if you're interested in education, there's a lot out there for you to do. Thank you.
Thank you.